morning and welcome to the Stahls TV Morning Show. I'm Courtney.
And I'm Jimmy.
And today we're excited to have you all here. We are going to be featuring again the Christmas patterns that we had at last week's episode. We're actually going to do a tutorial explaining exactly how to use the Cad-Cut patterns and show you how to make a look with some of these designs that we featured last week in the holiday episode with Jenna. In addition to that, we also have an exclusive interview from Eric Campbell, so we're excited about that. Eric actually was in the Stahls TV studio a few months back, and we were lucky to get this exclusive interview with him. He has a lot of insight that shares on adding heat printing to embroidery and really just has a lot of knowledge in the embroidery industry. So we're excited to bring that to you guys today here as well. But as always, we'd love to kick it off with the look of the week, so we'll do that first.
Holy patterns is all I have to say.
This one is crazy. So I took a look back at this, and Brett submitted this on our Facebook page through the show and tell, and it's actually a ton of print and cut heat transfer vinyl. So if you own a print cut system, you can really get crazy with full color because you're printing all the patterns out and just cutting it and weeding it. Likewise, just like the Cad-Cut patterns that I'm showing you here today, you can create some designs like that too. So he added some glitter flake to add some bling and really just made this totally unique. I mean, the design really pops off the garment.
If you had to guess how many colors were in that, what would you say?
I couldn't. I actually tried to count how many of these would be, if you were doing this as an individual heat transfer vinyl materials, how many were on here, and I think it's somewhere around 20 different materials, but luckily he had that print cut system, so he printed the vinyl, weeded it, and then created it and just added some accents with the glitter flake with the little hat on top of the M and all of that there. So really, really great design from Brett there. You can always submit your look of the weeks to us. We love to see them every week. So you can send those to emailing us at tv@stahls.com. You can tag us on Instagram at Stahls TV and on our Facebook page, which is where that one was pulled from. Every Saturday we have a show and tell, so you can even tune in there and check them out. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you like that look of the week and you're thinking about adding a new piece of equipment, you know, an eco-solvent printer might not be a bad idea. Yeah,
if you're doing a lot of full color or want to do custom patterns, I think it's a really big opportunity to have that ability. I see a lot of people using that even for like children's shirts where they're wanting to create full color photo images on the shirt for a children's apparel, and just a lot of opportunities with full color there. All right, so that's our look of the week. We love seeing that. Thanks to Brett for sharing that, as well as some other cool designs on the All Things Heat Printing page. Next, we want to go and dive into Make It Monday because we're really excited to show off our new printed material. So let's head over and do that. All right, so this is the printed heat transfer vinyl material. We showed you last week how you would order this product. You can customize your colors over at stahls.com under the Cad-Cut pattern section, and there are a ton of different patterns available. This one I love because it's kind of a sweater print, so it creates a really cool print there. So I'm going to start by showing you how this process works. So it is a printed heat transfer vinyl, so it's completely printed, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and weed away the excess material around our design to reveal it. So we have a few different design options here. Weed off this extra part here. This one has a weeding box, so we want to make sure to get the full design weeded out. So this one's going to say Happy Holidays with that nice print. So what we're going to do is just weed away the excess part of the material. Find my cut lines here on the second part. I don't want to weed away the wrong section. There we go. So we have two options here. We have a reverse weed, and then we have the initial weed as well. So I'm just going to go through and weed this material. So our printed vinyl is actually printed on the express print. So if you have ever used express print for a print cut machine, it's actually probably what Brett used in that look of the week design. It weeds incredibly easy, so I'm just going through and peeling out all of my cavities to reveal some cool prints here.
And they're really easy to work with as well. You know, Courtney had the blank sheet or the sheet of patterns initially. All you do is load that in, your vinyl cutter face up. Whenever you cut out your designs, if you do order the patterns, you're definitely going to want to not mirror your image. That's definitely a key point. I know you know, I'll be cutting out an array of designs, and I'll forget that I'm working with patterns, and I mirror my image, and then it's no good because it's in reverse. So just, you know, something to keep in mind if you are going to work with the patterns.
Yeah, definitely a good point there, because we see a lot of decorators that use heat transfer vinyl, and of course the first rule of heat transfer vinyl is to always mirror your design. So you want to be careful to make sure that you don't do that, because you'll be left with a design that is the wrong direction. You've got to redo it again. So another cool thing about this material is you notice that it was a large sheet of material, and so you can actually order this just by the sheet. And if you own embroidery equipment, which we're obviously going to be talking a good bit about embroidery today in the episode, you can even use this for Stahls Rip Away Applique. Find my last cut line here. So you can create some pattern applique with this material as well, which is really cool for the holidays. I think about this sweater pattern that we're seeing here being really great for that. So we have two different prints here. Let me go ahead and clean up some of these cavities into my other design. And Jimmy, you had mentioned before the morning show we were talking a little bit about patterns, and you shared some tips that you use whenever you mask and weed this.
You know, normally, well, the way that I learned was you basically mask your product. You'll take your squeegee, as you're going to do in a couple of minutes, and mask your design. And then traditionally, you would just go ahead and peel away the mask, and your design would come up with it. But, you know, the longer that I've been in this industry, the more I realize that the reverse weed method is a little bit easier to work with. And especially if you have any fine detail at all and you're working with patterns, or, you know, any materials that you need to mask in general, I find that if you mask your design, take your squeegee over it really well, and then take your whole design, flip it over, and actually peel the backing away first, you're going to get, you know, an easier way to remove your design from the initial carrier.
So kind of a reverse weed where you mask it first, create that pressure sensitive carrier like a normal heat transfer vinyl, and then weed it. So that's a really good tip for fine detail, because it allows you to get more detail because you're getting that sticky backing. All right, so I'm taking that heat transfer mask. If you order any of the Stahls Cad-Cut patterns, you would want to purchase the medium tack mask to go with it. You notice how I'm just laying it down in the center here. And then taking my squeegee. If you don't have a squeegee, you could use something like a credit card or some kind of key card to get a nice, even some people use rulers to get a nice grip on this. I'm just going to squeegee up and down, back and forth, and then I can go ahead and peel away my printed carrier. All right, a little noisy there, but we've been able to reveal the background there. So we have two different designs. We have one that says just Happy Holidays, and the other one has a reverse weed. So we're going to heat press one of these. Go ahead and let me know which one you like better. So Happy Holidays coming out of the block here on the top, or the Happy Holidays text. So you can just put block or text. I'm going to go ahead and trim these apart and then head over to my heat press so I can heat press them down. But let me know which one you guys would want to see for today's Make It Monday.
And then just another application tip for whenever you're pulling your backer off. If you notice that any of your letters come up or any corners at all, you can just go ahead and take your squeegee, give it a little elbow grease, and you know, mask it again, and it should come right off. If you have any air bubbles whatsoever, you see those, as long as they're not huge, they're not going to make a big difference. You can just go ahead and heat apply your item.
All right, so over here at the Fusion, I have the heat press. Here, heated up to 300 degrees, set at 15 seconds, which is the application for the patterns product or express print. So it's good for tri-blends or some of these heat-sensitive fabrics because it's got a 300-degree temperature, which is ideal. Go ahead and load this raglan on here. It has a nice holiday-inspired color. I see 1 vote for the block, 2 votes for the block. I see some text. So far, it looks like the block is winning. 3 for the block. All right, so unless we get quite a few other ones in for the text, it looks like the block is going to be the way to go. So one thing I liked about this block design, and the reason I chose it, was because I think it lets the pattern really stand out a little bit more by using that reverse weed text and then allowing it to say Happy Holidays. One thing to keep in mind with a product like this, though, is you don't want to have the material too much of a block because it's going to be a little bit heavy. It's still a printed vinyl, so you want to keep it a little bit softer on the garment, which I think this reverse weed does a good job of that because it still opens a lot, creates a lot of open, airy spaces. So we've got Happy Holidays. I'm going to go ahead and cover that with a cover sheet. Pull my collar off of the bottom plait in here. And then apply for the recommended application, 300, medium pressure, 15 seconds on the Fusion heat press. Oh, we got a few texts that came in last minute there, Jimmy. I could have, that might have been the winner on the vote. They were just a little late going in for the text. I'd press it to the back, Jimmy, but I think you want to wear this for the Happy Holidays episode that we do next, or...
I mean, I was actually going to wear that to my family's Christmas Eve party because I love it that much. But
something fashionable like that. So, again, the patterns create a really cool effect on the shirt there. You can see how we had that reverse out design created with that pattern. You can customize this to match the color of your design like we've done here, or any design, just simply by going over to Stahls.com and visiting the Cad-Cut pattern section. So great print there. I encourage you to take a look at those because you can customize them for any way for the holidays. And I know a lot of people, based on the look of the week this week, just looking at some of our show and tell on Facebook, a lot of different decorators were showing the Cad-Cut pattern. So go ahead and dive in there. I'm going to head back over to Jimmy and we'll start the discussion.
That was awesome. Thank you, Courtney. If that comes up missing, it was not me. And one other thing I'd like to talk about when working with patterns like this, when you just have your text and there's no real separation between that and your garment, we don't really have that problem with the gray garment that we have. But if you have a busier garment, you can always take maybe your initial design and do a gap outline around your text. That way you can, easily read it, or from afar you can see that it says Happy Holidays and your design's not getting lost in your garment.
Yeah, it's a good point. When you do a lot with a pattern, sometimes designs can get lost on the color of the shirt. So if you can do a background color that maybe makes the pattern really pop off. I see that a lot with pastel colors and some of the bright pastel patterns, being able to put that white or black background behind it so it stands off on all colored garments, especially if they're heathered. I see a couple questions coming in about the brand of the shirt. So the brand of that shirt was actually Boxer Craft. So they have a lot of really great, soft, comfortable raglan shirts, and that one's one of them. All right, so it looks like I've got most of the questions other than the brand of the shirt. Patterns for rip-away applique. Kathy, does the Teflon sheet need to be used when pressing? Yes. If you're using the rip-away applique technique with this product, I would recommend using a cover sheet when you heat press it. So if for those of you that aren't familiar with the rip-away applique process, basically you would take hoop your garment, you would run a run stitch down, and then you would take a sheet of the material just like you're seeing here on the roll, cut it down to fit your design, lay that in place, and then run a satin stitch around, which then cuts the material, and then you can rip away the excess material, but it would rip away from the inside, so you need to heat press it and finish it off there. Really, really cool effects. We have a ton of videos if you just search Rip Away on the Stahls TV site that shows you that process, but yes, definitely use a cover sheet to avoid that sticking to your heat press. And a pillow. Teresa's got a good chime in there with that, so that was quick. Definitely use a heat printing pillow just simply because those stitches are pretty thick, so you want to make sure you're getting a good pressure across everything.
And I would use a cover sheet just to protect my satin stitch as well. I mean, I don't know that it would scorch, but better be safe than sorry. Yeah,
definitely a good point there. So those are some things about patterns. Definitely a cool option for a lot of people that are decorating with embroidery. And I think that's kind of leads into our main episode today. So for embroidery, a lot of embroiderers add heat printing. Rip-away applique is just one reason as to why, because there's a lot of ways you can expand an embroidery business with your I see Marcy typed in there to remove your carrier with rip-away applique. Definitely want to do that. But there's a lot of opportunity for an embroidery business to expand with heat printing because it really allows you to do what you can't do with your embroidery. It may allow you to offer more budget-friendly options to your customers, maybe hit some lower price points, allows you to get some things done faster, different finishes, just a lot of opportunity. And so we had Eric Campbell come into the studio, and since he works a lot with embroidery, wanted to get his intake on how the two jive together and get some feedback from him. So we will show you guys that interview with Eric now. I'd like to thank Eric Campbell for coming into the Stahls TV studios and spending some time with us, sharing some insight on the embroidery and heat printing market. Eric is the partner relationship manager with DecoNetwork, and so you have quite a bit of experience with the embroidery market in the industry, and so you lend a lot of unique insight. So we appreciate you coming in here. Do you want to share some of the background with the Stahls TV audience on kind of what you do and what you've been doing in the industry?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Well, my background in the industry really is as a decorator for about the last 20 years almost, starting out as an embroidery operator and then eventually as a digitizer. So for about 18 years, that's what I did. I digitized day in, day out doing production. But during that, what people know me from, if they know me at all, which minor stardom, right, is because of all the writing I did for the industry. For many years, I've written blogs and magazines and different posts for various industry sources. So really what you know me from probably is that, or from teaching in the last year. Now, and with DecoNetwork, what I'm doing now is trying to bring together decorators and vendors and different partners so that we all have the best kind of relationships we can have that have value for everyone.
Perfect, yeah, so quite a bit of experience, a lot of time spent in the apparel decorating industry, and I know you're passionate about it, I know you love it.
Absolutely.
And so when you think about just looking at the embroidery market, I know that's where most of your experience is, what are the biggest reasons that you see embroiderers start to really expand into heat printing?
Well, honestly, they don't have a method to do any other kind of decoration but embroidery, and printing is really necessary. I mean, embroidery is not the best medium for everything as much as I love it. You do have to have printing for doing lighter garments, t-shirts, things like that, and it just makes sense to expand. And heat printing has the lowest barrier of entry and really is a friendly thing, especially the way you guys do it at Stahls, because there's so much education involved and there's so much hand-holding that people do, you can really get into it pretty simply.
Yeah, so low cost definitely to get into, and also the space and everything that's required. You know, just a minimal investment, minimal space required for you to add that to your shop. So I think it's a lot of benefits. Now, for those that do both, do you see any kind of production tips or anything for being able to run a business with embroidery and heat printing?
Well, the best production tip I can have is just that you pay attention to the spaces that you have for each thing, making sure you have threadability if you have to go from one to the next, and certainly to think about the layout of your shop so you have good throughput. Invariably what people do is they'll kind of get jammed together, but they don't have a good place for garments to come in and leave, and they really need to make sure they're thinking about that throughput as they plan their shop.
Yeah, definitely planning the workflow as far as from start to finish, and you know, even with embroidery, thinking about what else can I be doing when my machine's sewing out that I can maximize my time or my employees' time, and I think they both mesh well together for that.
Oh, absolutely. Since embroidery takes the time that it takes, and it's just going to be a time-intensive thing, being able to heat press and print next to your embroidery machine is just awesome. As long as you keep it ergonomic and make sure that everything flows correctly, and it's not too hard for anybody to get to the things that they need.
Yeah, if you can kind of start that embroidery machine, turn around and press a shirt, that's obviously the ideal way to maximize your time.
But still while you're watching your embroidery machine,
well,
so
course,
that you're making sure your thread breaks are taken care of and nothing's going wrong.
Keep your eye there. I guess that's why it's good to have a transfer that applies quickly so you can not burn a shirt while you're fixing that thread.
Absolutely.
Great. So great tips there. Pricing is also a challenge that we see a lot with all apparel decorators, but embroidery, especially with being able to just price effectively. Do you see any tips for pricing embroidery or heat printing together or with each other?
Well, I think the critical thing is to realize what's good for what process. Heat printing per impression is going to be cheaper, so when you're having a budget-conscious client, it's good to have heat printing as an option. Embroidery is, of course, the gold standard for certain things, and you're going to want to use embroidery, and it's a high-value proposition, but it's slow. So when you need fast and budget, heat printing is a really great option to have. So that's really the pricing thing to watch for, is to know what makes sense for what kind of customer and what kind of garment. Yeah,
so it really comes down to knowing your customer, knowing their budget, and then offering a print solution that fits them. But I think, you know, I know you agree, but heat printing and embroidery tend to mesh well together because they allow you to fit both bills. So you have that higher end customer that kind of gives that golden standard, and then that more cost conscious one as well, a solution for that.
Absolutely.
Great. So one of the great things we wanted to bring you in for is really you've done some unique out-of-the-box applications with embroidery. You've really kind of taken it to the new step, and you like to play around with it. Obviously, that's where your passion really comes out. So what are some of the next level things that embroiderers can do with their machines?
Well, what's really been coming out lately, I mean, you guys have the Ripway applique, which is really awesome. It's great to see people doing that because it's such a simple way to get so much texture and color into your embroidery, and it's actually quite simple and quite permanent. People worry about that, but once it's pressed, it's very permanent and it looks very good and it's easy. You don't have to have extra equipment. So I think that's one of the great things. It seems like, okay, oh, it's next level, it looks great, but it's super easy to do. And I hate to say, sometimes you feel like you're cheating when you do it.
Yeah.
One of the other great things I like to do is to do applique and to layer on other stitching elements on top of the applique. You'll also find some people don't always love the look of shiny applique. I mean, I like it. I like how the poly twill looks, but sometimes people don't like that. And the great thing you can do is to use light stitching on top of it. You still get a large stitch savings, but you can add some texture which breaks up that kind of area. Now, certainly, one of the other things I do a lot of is patch making. I know we've talked about that, and I've talked about that with people frequently. I can't tell you how many people have said, okay, go grab that cutter, get that PS Poly 12, that's how we're going to get that done. But patch making is another thing that I think is huge now. I mean, not only is patch making and collecting huge, but applying patches to garments has just gotten bigger and bigger in the last couple of years, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere for a while. So I think that's the other thing you can do is patch making, and we can certainly talk more about that.
Yeah, and I think you share you shared with me a unique process that you do for patches and kind of your experience in that there.
Well, and it's funny. It's like there's nothing that I discuss, no matter where I go, what I'm teaching, that doesn't end up in patches. And in this particular case, it's I like to use a water-soluble backing or stabilizer. I don't like saying backing because stabilizer is what it does. It's not just there to be behind stuff. So you take your water-soluble stabilizer, a couple of sheets of a fiber stabilizer, and then you essentially do an applique, and it's the same kind of thing. I like to use a custom cut, so I'll use something like the Graph-Tech cutter, Roland cutter, cut some of that the poly twill, the pressure-sensitive poly twill, run a stitch line to show where it goes, slap it down, and then the one thing that's different is I run all the central material in the patch first, all of the designs in the center, before I run the edge, because that way you don't take the stabilization out of the stabilizer. You don't start tearing that too quickly before it gets to the end. The great thing about that water soluble, you cut away the excess, you run a little water around the edge, and you get a very clean edge it's not a marrowed edge, the classic edge of patching, but it is a clean edge that doesn't show any sort of excess or backing. And that's what I really love to use. Honestly, that's what I use that poly twill for the most, is just making tons and tons of patches. Yeah, so it's a great and easy way for embroiderers to kind of get into patch making without a lot of extra expense or machinery or anything like that. And so you've got some unique stories, I think, you've done a lot of patches for a lot of unique companies and a lot of entities there. Oh yeah, no, the best thing is that in New Mexico, in Albuquerque where I'm from, we have a lot of filming for TV and movies, and so things like Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad or The Night Shift, we've done a ton of patches for those folks. And what's always fun to tell a story, I mean, it's for the folks out there, it's like, what it is, it's regular production. Everybody says, oh, it's fun to work on the movies. I'm like, no, it's just fast. Luckily, they do pay more for it, though. And the thing that I would say with patches to look for is that you actually get a really high rate of return on these things. You don't have a garment that you can ruin, and you don't have that high markup, and all you have is a little piece of material, and sometimes you can charge as much as an embroidered garment for a single patch. So it actually has a really high margin. But the cool thing is being able to work on these things where they're on screen. The one story I always love to tell, though, is that I had a patch that I did for Better Call Saul, and it's a shoulder patch on an Albuquerque policeman, and everybody was just telling me because I was agonizing over the detail because it was our first piece we did for him. They're like, oh, don't worry about it, nobody will ever see it. The second season, or the first episode of the second season, the policeman walks out, and he's from here up on screen. So even like on a 50-inch screen, patches about this big, so you can see everything that's wrong with it. You can see everything that's wrong with it. I can see everything that's wrong with it. Not everybody can. Yeah, it's great. It's really interesting. You're able to kind of find a niche there in your local area, and I think a lot of decorators can really benefit from being able to find that niche, what works well for them in their market, and really expand on it and find something high profit like that. Well, and the great thing about honestly, this is also with heat printing too, it just expands your abilities. And what I always say to people is that if you're an embroiderer right now and you don't know how to expand or how to get into printing, I mean, it's tempting to go direct to garment. There's nothing wrong with direct garment, but it's very expensive. So if you're a small shop or a home shop, start with a heat press. That's the first step you should always start from. Go from there to a cutter. And from there you get the access to so many materials and treatments. It's just immense. And it's also, honestly, I'm not saying there's no skill to it, but it's not that hard. It's not as hard as some of the other processes. Right. It's definitely, when you compare it to DTG or even direct screen printing, it's a lot easier to just pick up and start doing without a lot of training. Absolutely. And obviously at Stahls TV, we do a lot of training as well, so it's easy to learn new techniques and new strategies there. And so I think heat printing lends well to helping people really improve their business.
And so there's a lot of ways. What ways do you see for the decorator, the embroiderer who wants to expand? What ways do you see for them to really improve their business moving forward?
Well, there's a lot of ways. First thing I'd like to say to embroiderers, maybe I'll look at you out there directly, embroiderers. You need to sometimes adopt these new technologies and come out here and test things out. I mean, the tried and true is great, but we all have to get out there and try new things. And certainly, heat printing is part of that. I think it's coming to the point where people understand it. They're starting to get it more often, and they don't think of it as just vinyl. The glitter flake is out there. The different materials are out there. And honestly, the other thing I'd say is it's an incredible savings of labor. One of the favorite pieces we used to do for trade shows, I had a real estate company we worked for, and we did the distressed applique. That's a thing where we pulled it out of the box, heat pressed it, and out it went. That's an incredible margin for us, especially when you consider what it would be like to do all that custom. So that's really great. But what I would love to say is you can integrate these technologies that are coming out. More and more people are coming online, and as you know, with DecoNetwork, that's something that I'm very concerned about, making sure people come online the right way and work the business processes the right way. The great thing is when you have a digital tool chain where you're getting art directly from your website, where things are finally, and as everyone comes along with that in the customer world, you can finally go to places like Stahls where you can buy transfers. You can send that art directly off, get the transfer back to you, and just with a heat press in your machine, you can do great multimedia, and you can also do customization directly off of that digital tool chain. And that's really where I see people at, is getting that personalization going, working on their websites, and having that sales all the time, and having that tool. Ultimately, you're always just trying to make it easier for the customer to buy from you.
And I think that's really going to be the most important thing moving forward for decorating shops that really want to progress and they want to be the future of decorating. It's being able to offer that personalization and do it in a way that's easy for your customers to order.
Absolutely.
And for them to be able to produce it very quickly. So I think definitely a lot of opportunity to move forward there and to advance.
Absolutely. And honestly, when you have good tools and you have the setup, the throughput worked out, it's easy for you, it's easy for the customer, and it's just a win-win all over the place.
So Eric really shared some really interesting information and just some opportunities he's had with printing for movies and doing patches for movies. I thought that was really one of the most interesting things, how he was able to dial in on a niche that was completely random to his area and be able to really profit on it big time.
Yeah, absolutely. I recently read an article. It was, I think somebody posted it in the Heat Press for Profit group, which if you have not joined yet, you should definitely join. But anyway, it was from the new season of Stranger Things, which I have not personally watched. I don't think you have either.
Not yet, but it's pretty popular.
Yeah, but I hear good things. Anyway, one of the characters was actually wearing a hoodie from a Minnesota museum, I think. It's like a paleontology museum. And it just took off overnight. I believe the museum sold around 18,000 hoodies just because it was featured in this episode of Stranger Things. So, you know, those niche markets sometimes can be the most profitable when you think about it.
Yeah, and we talk a lot in the morning show about how to find that niche where you're not competing with other people. And I think if you can find that target, of course, not everybody's going to have the opportunity to maybe have movies shooting in their area. But if you can find a niche that's maybe unique, maybe it's a item that can't be printed, maybe it's a waterproof jacket that a lot of people have problems decorating, but you know it would sell very well to a lot of industries. You know, if you can figure out how to dial in and print that successfully, then you can go out to customers and you can say, I can do this. It's a specialty item, and you can make big profits by just competing in a unique way.
And even recreating some of the looks, you know, if it's not, let's say, copywritten, or if you're allowed to recreate the looks, you know, if you have a vinyl cutter and a heat press, it's fairly easy to, you know, recreate certain looks that are popular in Hollywood. Yeah,
I think Eric shares some tips there about just how the heat press and the vinyl cutter really lends to allowing an embroidery business to really expand and to do jobs that they would normally have to say no to if the price wasn't there. So being able to have that ability to add a vinyl cutter and add a heat press can be huge.
Well, I like the vinyl cutter, you know, adding it to the embroidery business just for the pressure-sensitive poly tool, as he talks about. You know, if you need a specific applique, you can just order it. You know, it makes it a little bit easier. You know, you don't have to turn away business. You don't have to say, I don't have this color. You can just go ahead and cut it right there for them. And then another key point is, you know, embroidery is not always the best way. You know, Eric obviously has a passion for it, but, you know, garments like I have on that are a little bit thinner may not be the best for embroidery. So if you have a vinyl cutter and a heat press, you may be able to work around that.
Yeah, it allows you to kind of print some of those very thin, very lightweight, very stretchy items. So definitely a good way for a business to expand. Sharon even mentioned that she loves her vinyl cutter and heat press, so we appreciate her sharing that. I definitely love the ones we have here, and I think a lot of businesses pay off their vinyl cutters and heat press investments very, very quickly because of what they can do with them. I did see a question come in from Mike that he asked, is there a good digitizing software that doesn't break the bank and is simple to learn? I don't know what you're looking for as far as a digitizing software. If you're looking for a complete digitizing software, Wilcom is the only software that I'm really familiar with. I know it does take some learning to try to get it up and running for your embroidery machine. We do at Stahls offer what we call Twill Stitch Pro Plus. So it's actually a digitizing software for applique. So it's not a complete digitizing software where it won't take a design and create a complete thread image for your machine or for your embroidery machine, but it'll allow you to create applique-so files very quickly and very easily from vector files. So that one I would highly recommend if you're going to be doing a lot of applique, and that's what you're looking for, a digitizing software. It looks like Teresa agrees with me. Wilcom is what she used, and so she'll back me on that one. She loves it, and it's easy to use there. Marcy had asked, could you share the site for Eric? Would love to read his blog. I believe that it's just erichcampbell.com, but I will confirm that and put that here in the comments on the video. Eric sometimes watches the morning show, so I don't know if he's chiming. If he's watching this, he can chime in as well. If not, we'll definitely make sure we add that here in the comments on the video that's recorded. So next week, Josh and Jenna will be back. They've got some exciting things to share with you guys. Jenna actually also has a class this week on Thursday, so tune in, as always, to the Stahls Facebook page. If you get notifications, you can actually sign up to get notifications for all of our live events. That includes the morning show and every live class that we do where we're training on different things. This week, Jenna's going to talk about shattered text, so how to create kind of that cool, broken, shattered text effect in CADWorks Live and heat press that. And then we have another exciting live class coming up the following week as well with some new heat transfer vinyl products. So lots of good stuff coming. We look forward to seeing you guys on an upcoming morning show, and we'll see you then.